So this evening, we want to outline for you our thoughts in terms of how to create a budget that is, our goal is to have it be very and readily understandable by the community and have some very specific strategic goals and objectives in terms of moving Winstead forward. And the first step of that process is creating a baseline. And that's the budget from which we'll make adjustments. And the way to create a baseline is to first start with the current year's budget. We add in all contractual obligations. In other words, all the things that we're, as of this time, know we are going to be legally obligated to respect and do. We need to take out any one-time revenues and one-time expenses that exist in the budget. And then lastly, something that Dale started and the rest of the board's been working on that is very good budgeting, which is remove the capital items from the budget and put them in a parallel capital budget so that you understand, and we all understand as a community, what our operating and ongoing functions cost for the town, and then what are the capital expenditures or investments that we're making for the community. And so from this baseline, we can determine what additional investments we want to recommend that we all make. And again, our goal and objective is to create something that's understandable and clear and make investment choices for the community, and most importantly, support grand list growth. I think we all know that through that growth, in whatever form it takes, we'll be able to fund continued improvements and move Winchester forward.
Our focus of your investment dollars, the capital budget, will be for roads and economic development. We all appreciate that through strategic spending and grand list growth, we will be able to grow and improve Winstead.
I want to again thank Dale and Lori for getting that detail together and getting it to us late on Monday night, because it was through that supporting documentation and understanding what's necessary that we're able to restore that. And in addition to that, we have really started a very detailed comb through the process with the team of 5, and we've been able to make some progress. I will tell you it's going to be hopefully good work over the course of the next week to bring this to closure by the 18th, when the budget really needs to be completed, which is a week from Friday.
And as we try to structure a budget that really is community focused, that is going to be a key part of what you'll see out of the Board of Selectmen this year. 2 specific areas that we want to make sure that they know this up front, that the library will receive their allocation of $200,003, which represents a $25,000 increase. We think the library is a valuable and important part of this community, and we want to put their minds at ease right up front. Secondly, the senior center will also get Dale's recommended amount of $183,782. Again, important that these 2 groups know up front that they will not be short funded in any way.
Now, I will say that we have work to do, and we welcome everybody coming and listening to us as we discuss the various components of the budget. I really appreciate the work that the departments did in putting the budget, detailed together, and the town manager in assembling that into sort of a list of if we had a good world and great funding, we'd love to satisfy everybody's requests. But I think it's now incumbent upon us as a board to evaluate all this information and determine what adjustments to make to the baseline. So again, we're going to start with this year's revenues and this year's expenses. We'll put the contractual obligations in to the expense line. We'll have to take out one-time revenues and expenses, and I think it's important to note that while we have some significant one-time expenses on the CapEx side, namely the $800-odd million that was spent on the median, we obviously are hoping to make similar investments but have it be in roads and growth of the community. We also have significant one-time revenue losses because there was almost a $600,000 insurance payment that was budgeted and actually spent as part of this year's budget that we'll have to make up. So we are looking at how do you fund town operations, how do you keep school operations, how do you fund debt service, and put more money into the fund balance without raising everybody's taxes very, very high. We want to keep the budget within line for operations so people understand it, And any increases that we're going to ask you for in taxes, any increases that we come forward with are going to be for roads and investments in the community. There are salary increases, there are increases that are contractual, but we are going to work in terms of how the broad budget, both the fine detail and the broad budget works to make sure the operating budget does not require a tax increase, and that any increase, again, goes to invest in the roads, which we really drastically need to be fixed. I also want to comment that in the current time frame, we're also going to be focusing and working with how to get things done as exists now, most importantly, how to get the Holabird Avenue Bridge open correctly and soon. So providing meaningful capital roads and economic development represents a needed investment, and it's something that I think we all can get behind and that I think we all know needs to be done. But again, any and all increases in taxes will be restricted to capital needs and capital requirements. We will look to manage operations and manage operating expenditures so that any extra dollars we ask for are invested to grow the community, most importantly, grow the grand list, and over time have funding through growth in the grand list to continue to improve the community. And that's all we have for this evening. I thank everybody for coming. Tomorrow night we're going to start the process of going through with the department heads. We're going to lead off with the Public Works Director and the Purchasing Manager, assuming they're available. And I think we've scheduled a meeting. Is it in the same place, same time tomorrow?
Yes, it is.
So it's at 7 o'clock here in this room.
I'm not available.
You're not available tomorrow.
I moved my schedule to
Okay.
meet tonight short term.
Okay, what about next week?
I will have to look at
Will you look at it and get it back to us?
it.
Great.
It's, I'm not trying, it's.
No, I understand. I understand.
For water and sewer, I stayed over.
No, I understand. We had not had a chance to coordinate with Dale, and so we assumed, since we hadn't talked to Dale, that that you wouldn't be coming, because we hadn't talked to Dale. So I appreciate you being here this evening, and we will find a way to meet with you next week. We'll figure it out. Move again to the 2014-15 budget presentation, and that is to share some good news on the Holabird Avenue Bridge. We were able to have a very productive and good meeting this afternoon with Dale and Neil Amwake, and I'm very happy to say that the outcome of that is that we are in process to have the bridge open by no later than the middle of May. Neil has actually, on his own initiative, started a bid waiver to remove the top layer of asphalt and have the bridge inspected within the next 2 weeks. Once that is complete, and we are once again assured that the bridge is sound and safe, which is what every report to date has said, we will, however, check one more time, take off the whole top layer. We will have both WMC, our engineers, as well as the Connecticut Department of Transportation's engineers confirm this. Then our own DPW staff will fill in whatever damage or holes there are to the bridge, and we will move to an overlayer coat on top of that. And again, the goal is to hopefully be in a position to open the bridge even before Neil leaves, but in any event, no later than the middle of May. I want to thank Dale for working with Neil on this, and I want to thank Neil for moving ahead with the advice and consent of WMC Construction. So again, it is springtime, the snow is gone, it is raining a great deal outside, so we are at a point in time where it is, we can now move towards getting the bridge repaired. I also want to thank my colleagues Jorge and Dan for staying on top of this and asking all the right questions and really motivating everybody to move to this point. So again, I think everybody's working well together, and again, I thank Dale and Neil for having that meeting and being on board with us. And with that, I want to move to a discussion of the 2014-15 budget for the town of Winchester. I'm going to first ask for a motion to open the meeting to say that we are now beginning to discuss what will become the proposed budget to be voted on at the town meeting by the electors of the town of Winchester. May I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. I am now going to switch to the seats on the other side. Again, I want to thank Dale and all of the staff for putting in a lot of effort in the months of January, February, and March to put together all the information that was required to get to this point where the selectmen as a policy board will be making judgments and decisions for having a budget to then go to town meeting to be voted on. I'll start by saying that our overall approach to budgeting this time around is to ensure that we actually cover all of the key areas of expenditures in the budget, that they are all known, discussed, and we have as good a numbers as we possibly can. We have ensured this time around that we know what the town operations are and that we don't have any categories, as we have in the past, of insurance or overtime, or you pick a category that's not covered. We've done our best to make sure that we've learned from the past. We've also got the entire and the proper numbers from the Board of Education, and that is reflected in here. We have made sure that the entire debt service of the town is included. Again, a large portion of the debt service that's been borrowed, particularly in the last 10 years, was to update and improve the water and sewer facilities of the town. The goal and game plan is for those facilities to be paid for by the users of those facilities through their user fees. In the past, however, we have not necessarily included all of this debt service and recognized it in the budget to make sure that we budget for it, because although, again, the goal is, and this year I'm happy to say that at this point we're on a run rate where water and sewer will actually pay all of the debt service that is attributable to them and are attributable to that business. The borrowings are actually in the name of the town of Winchester. So the town of Winchester is always obligated to make those bond payments, make those payments to the bank, regardless of whether we received revenues from water and sewer. And for the very first time, and I thank Dale for spending a lot of time with King and King to run to earth along with Neil, how to calculate every component so that we have a full grossed up budget that shows all of the costs and all of the revenues, most importantly the debt service component, and in the past was not properly recognized in the budget. And then lastly, we have done our best to make sure we budget for both contingencies that may arise, investment opportunities, which we'll touch on in a minute, that make sense for us to do as a community, and to continue to grow our fund balance. As everyone knows, it's been a painful couple of years, and our fund balance was more than decimated. It was negative for quite a period of time. I am very happy to say that I am lucky to be sitting in this chair and be able to say that the forecast right now for the end of this fiscal year at June 30 is that we will be somewhere between 1.3 and likely 1.6 million dollars in positive fund balance and actual cash. So that is a very significant improvement for the town, but we still have a ways to go. The rating agencies and the investors that we might want to borrow from in the future really want to see that money at that level of the fund balance at more like 10%. So we'll talk about this a little further in terms of how we've planned for this in the budget. That would mean a fund balance of $3.3 million. So as you can see, we're only about halfway there. So with this in mind, we need new revenues for capital investment. And at this juncture, this board, this group has decided that the focus really needs to be on roads. We need to repair that infrastructure in order to both provide appropriate and adequate service for the people that pay the taxes and live in town, and as importantly, to have basically a town that anybody can drive around and want to buy a house and want to move a business here. Right now, if you drive off of either Route 8, Route 44, Route 263, pick a state road, and head down a town road, you're very likely, very quickly going to run into some problems. Our goal is to start to address those needs and make it possible for both the citizens to travel around the roads happily and safely and to attract new citizens and new businesses.
This is something that, for whatever reason, there was talk around town that people were in danger of losing their positions or going from full-time to part-time. We want to make this very clear that we plan on maintaining the existing staff profile, no full-time to part-time changes, and no wholesale reductions in benefits. However, we don't plan on adding any new positions. The reality of pay increases and benefit increases are $325,000. We feel that that's a reality we have to go forward with, but we just want to be clear that we will not be reducing any full-time to part-time, and nobody will be losing their job. I think that's just something we want to be clear about and make sure that everyone is working without that in the back of their minds.
We value the town employees, and we want them to put their best foot forward. But we also think it's important for everybody who pays the taxes to understand that with the contractual obligations that we have on a run rate basis, our incremental additional cost year to year is going to be $300,000 to the plus going forward if we don't do anything to change the way we operate town. So this budget is a first step. We have focused on the costs that we can manage and control, which is we did not add any new people or any new heads or new positions. There were a number of requests for new heads and new positions, and I can appreciate that the managers really were thinking they could do a better job if they had more people, but the reality is that we can't afford to add any new heads. We already have substantial cost increases with the salary and benefit plans we have in place, and we need to do what we have as well as we can with the people that we have. Now, to that end, as we go further, what you'll see is we've erred on the side of providing everyone with the tools they need to do a good job. So here you see the net impact. In the current year's budget, we had a one-time insurance payment. This was one of the insurance payments with respect to Mr. Centrella's quite painful deeds to the town of $595,000. That was budgeted as a revenue item and spent, so it's a hole we have to fill. Town revenues at this juncture, and I think by we I'm using the royal we and including all the employees in Dale, have tried to be conservative, and so the projection on town revenues, and this is everything from marriage licenses to new building permits, are forecasted at this juncture to be down about $50,000. Our state and federal grant revenues are budgeted to be at this point down $10,000. Again, this is a net number. If you go to the front page of the detailed budget, which I want to let everybody know, for everybody that likes to look through and know exactly what we spend in postage in the town clerk's office, that will still be available. But the grant revenues, everything from our ECS grants from the state to our town road aid, to the Pequot grants and the pilot grants and everything else that we get from the state. The net result of that as they move the budget around in Hartford is at this juncture we're looking at $10,000 down. That number could still move because the budget in Hartford will not be completed until sometime in June. We will monitor that closely and we will keep everybody posted if there are any particularly negative surprises there. Again, we've already talked a bit about the employee costs, and what you see at the bottom is that the swing in costs of just doing what we do every day in Town Hall, at Public Works, with the fire department, with the police, it's $1 million swing against us. What does that mean? And I think it's also important to think about where we are. Again, while we've made significant progress, in addition to the $595, we've also collected another $500,000 insurance payment that's reflected in that possible $1.4 million to $1.6 million at the end of the year. Still, we are under a great deal of financial pressure. We have limited cash capital reserves. Again, that number should be north of $3 million. It's roughly half that number if everything goes well between now and June 30th. We still have substantial liabilities outstanding. We have about $2 million between the fiduciary accounts, everything from Soldiers Monument to the dog fund, and about $800,000 in pension payments that were not properly made in the last several years. So that's a real debt in addition to the regular debt that we've borrowed over time. At this juncture, we don't really have access to the debt markets. Let me be clear, there are banks that would continue to lend to us against our expected grant revenues in the future, much like the grant anticipation notes we've already done, but that is not attractive financing. That's cash flow financing. I think we want to avoid that because that's just more cost to help us with our day-to-day operations. That's not really moving us forward. We do have a lot of multi-year investments I think that we'd all like to see happen. Again, our emphasis initially is roads. We're going to have a significant amount of bridge repair in town in the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to have the Holabird Avenue Bridge fixed. We have to see how we're having the engineering work done for the West Road Bridge near the boat launch at Lake Winchester. And we've got the engineering work in place, and I think we have to see what any of next steps might be with respect to the Suckerbrook Bridge. Once you move away from roads and bridges, there's a very valid discussion on how do we want the school children to be housed over time. Again, this is a $50 to $100 million investment, potentially of a new building, but even a $20 or $30 million investment if we wanted to renovate one of the existing buildings. It's not something we're going to be able to do in the next 12 to 18 months, but it's something we want to start talking about. But the only way we get there is if we continue to stabilize our financials and stabilize our growth. So this budget, what do? We add to the fund balance that we are going to have money, we're designed to have money to net to fall to the bottom line. We're going to reduce the liabilities that we have outstanding. Again, we have about $2 million of historical liabilities in addition to our regular debt service we need to catch up on and the pension shortfall that I mentioned. I'm going to take a minute here to step away from the budget itself to talk about the water and sewer money that is paid to the town outside of the budget. Again, as many of you know, painfully, the various accounts in town were used to fund various things over the last several years. Most notably, that what we've been able to trace is that right now there is about a $3 million obligation. So in other words, it's an IOU between the water and the sewer area and the general fund of the town. So in other words, they owe money to the town. On the other side of the general fund ledger, we owe money, a little over $1 million, to a bunch of fiduciary accounts that are listed at the back of the regular annual reports, and we are behind on our pension obligations. We budgeted them, but they were never made. Over the next, as we have discussed in the past, or I have discussed in the past, there has been some concern about the ability to collect that extra $400. So this is not the debt service. This is not the operating budget of water and sewer. It's the extra $400 on top of that. It's $200 literally from each of water and sewer. At this point in the fiscal year, we have received $100,000 from sewer and nothing from water. However, the collection rates and the pattern that we look at means that in all likelihood we will collect the entire $400 by June 30th. This is something we will be monitoring very, very closely and keep you posted. This is outside the budget again because it's an IOU, it's an asset. We hold an asset that says water and sewer each owe us money. And we, on the other hand, have assets sitting at those other accounts that say we, the general fund, owe them money. Over the course of the next 12 to 24 months, our objective is to continue to collect from water and sewer and then retire, so we'll have the obligation on our balance sheet that water and sewer owes us will go down and it will become cash, and then we will take that cash to pay off our obligations on the other side. And as I watch Sheila nodding, I will tell her that the most important one and a high one on the list is the Soldiers Monument. We want to get the money to you to be able to take care of, maintain, and improve that. So that's a high focus on that. And I'm confident now with the work that Dale and Robin and Chris have done that we're going to get back on our feet. We won't be able to fund everybody immediately, but we are going to be able to have the funding to get people going again.
You want to cover the pension shortfall?
Thank you, Candace. Yes, so the good news on the pension, or the news on the pension is, the good news is, as some of you may have seen, the Attorney General announced a settlement yesterday with respect to Mr. Centrella.
which nets the town basically $300,000 at least on the pension. We will have more pension assets, both cash and real assets, to use to cover the existing town employees. As unusual as this may sound, Mr. Centrella actually had the right to claim the cash of about $100,000 that he had paid into the pension fund back. The Attorney General and the state's Attorney General were able to persuade Mr. Centrella that it was the right thing to do to return that money to the town. So we've got a $300,000 catch-up there. This budget also has another $300,000 investment that we're asking the taxpayers to make. So those two payments of $300 each, or rather a payment and a diminution of liabilities, will result in a net contribution to the pension fund of about $600,000 increase in assets within the next 12 months. I think it's important to note also, though, that we need to take a look at, because of various reasons, the pension board has been recently reconstructed. We need to get updated information from our insurance folks who calculate the payments out to the various people that are already retired and the people that will retire in the future. And the net result is we will be back to you in the next 6 months to post you on what we think more needs to be contributed to the pension fund to get us appropriately funded. But it is important that, number one, we have the $300,000 from Mr. Centrella, and as importantly in this budget, and this is something I believe that Dale thought of a long time and crafted, we're asking the taxpayers to make a comparable match so that we can largely catch up on the pension shortfall. And then the last line, the long-term need to analyze and optimize the way we deliver services. This is going to be a message over the next 12 to 24 months. Again, we're maintaining staff, we're honoring their pay and benefit increases, but by the same token, we have to look at how we're delivering services, what it costs us, and if there's a way we can do it better at a lower cost. It's just a fact of life. But in this budget, in this next year, we will keep everybody who is currently an employee of the town of Winchester and who has a contract with the town of Winchester, we will be honoring that. There will be no changes.
Thank you, Marcia. I want to speak briefly to kind of the good stuff, I guess, and that is capital investment. And just a little bit of a backdrop here. Dale provided us, through the work of the department heads, a pretty significant laundry list of capital investments that they felt were important for the town. And I can assure you, deliberated at length as to how to address each and every one of those requests. What came out of those meetings was a pretty unanimous focus that the town needs to repair its infrastructure. There's no way that we could, in good conscience, sit up here and let our roads continue to deteriorate the way they have been. And so, collectively, you'll see here on line 1 that we are going to put $600,000 towards road repair and improvements, and that includes paving, drainage, and whatever professional advice that we can get from Dale and Neil while he's here, and whoever replaces Neil. And I want to caution everyone to tell you that we are going to spend that $600,000 very, very, very wisely. And I want to repeat, we are going to spend that money very, very wisely. Does it mean we're going to fix every road? Absolutely not. But we will get input from the professionals as to how to spend that money and get the best bang for our buck. So I want to assure everybody that that's going to be a focus for the coming year. And again, I appreciate all the hard work from our group to come up with the number. It's probably more significant than I thought it would be, so to their credit, I'm glad that we're able to post that $600,000. In addition, Dale and several key department heads, Chief Scannell and Mr. Shopey, we are budgeting for the police station a good part of the money that Bob had asked to do some of the necessary repairs downstairs. And in addition, we are going to fund the 2 existing police vehicles that we have right now. Those are leases, and we're going to add an additional vehicle as well. That was something that he felt was critical to the safety of the public, and we recognize that and want to make sure that that's addressed clearly in this budget. We had talked about, and I made the comment the other night, that we are going to pave the senior center parking lot. I've parked in that a few times over the past few months and tell you that that absolutely will be a priority should this budget be passed. So any liabilities we might have as far as people falling will hopefully be eliminated with the repaving of that lot. Lastly, the fire department had asked for some fire extraction equipment. And again, the numbers were crunched, and we will be able to provide some pretty key equipment to anybody that's in a serious accident. In addition, we just want to point out too that the $600,000 is going to be new money. In the operating budget, there are engineering and road supplies, that's asphalt and concrete and things that actually they need to do their job. So that bumps the real number up to almost, what, $770,000, $769,000, which we feel, again, is an investment in the town. It's a priority that we feel the citizens can see visually that we're making some headway towards, number one, accepting responsibility for the condition of the roads, but also funding the fix. And I think that's a clear distinction that we want to make here tonight, that it's a priority we have embraced. We hope the public and the voters, when this budget goes to referendum, will understand that this is something that's critical, not only for the safety of our citizens, but also for people that want to come in town and invest. They want to see clearly that we're addressing some very obvious problems. And as Marcia mentioned before, you get off the state roads and drive any of the back roads. I think it's clear that we have some significant issues with our infrastructure. So we have spent a great deal of time here and effort into putting together what I feel is a pretty strong focus on capital investment.
I'd like to talk about the Board of Selectmen's contingency. That really is an area where it's a section that we've put aside for strategic investments. We're going to focus on financial stability and economic growth. So we are seeing that putting in a $575,000 investment into Winstead's future, and that comprises of earlier this year, the Board of Selectmen had voted on a new policy to increase our funding by 10%. So we're following through that. Initially, Dale had presented $438,000. We've increased that to $450,000 so we can reach that target faster, and we've been able to do that by looking at the numbers. Additionally, you'll remember in the CIP program, a section there was a $175,000 component for financial software program. But in order to enact that, we want to make sure that we have a financial director in place. That also was not necessarily a qualified number. So, we're putting that $70,000 aside. I also want to make sure that when we do put it in place, that we're able to get the Board of Education and perhaps with a new superintendent to join us, because that software actually was presented by Robin, so you could link both the town and the Board of Education finances together. So we want to wait until a little bit later on in the year when we have a new finance director and we have an agreement from the Board of Education to actually do that. Additionally, Dale had introduced an economic development program person, so we're working very closely with Dale. We want to have an incentive-based program that will help support Dale's efforts to develop economic development as a program. And we've heard everyone's needs for needing to develop, really have an emphasis on economic development, and we feel this will help Dale's efforts in being able to pursue new businesses more effectively.
And I want to build on that comment and just say that we will be keeping Scott Eisenlaw in Town Hall. He is someone who is passionate about the community, who wants to see it grow and develop. He will be our community development officer on site. He will be working with Dale and with whoever the outside program member or members are. He'll be the person here to be the touchstone to make sure things are coordinated smoothly. It is still a part-time position, so we need to be strategic, but we will be keeping Scott's experience as well on the inland wetlands side, because we do have a great deal of water in town. But I think it's very important to understand that the economic development of the town is something that I think we're all acutely aware of, and we hear you in terms of making a plan to have this happen. So we're trying to bring it to a different level. I'll be candid with you, this is something that's still very much in the development phase. It's something that we need to do a lot more work with Dale on to figure out the best way to deploy this resource, but creating something that's an appropriate incentive-based system to try to bring new companies and new people to Winchester is something that we are very, very serious about. And again, we hope as you look at this budget, you'll support that and support the budget. Now we're going to take a moment and talk about the 3 key areas in town. I'm going to lead off with the highways because it is a road emphasis. As you can see here, we have, almost a $75,000 contractual obligation commitment in terms of the staff in the highway department. Because of the way the contracts work, there's about a 6% salary increase for the guys in the highway department. But I think it's important to note as well that we agreed with the discretionary adjustments, in other words, the adds and the subtracts. Everything that Neil Amwake suggested, pretty much we accepted across the board. So what you see here is a budget that grows. This is the only budget in the town hall, in the town resources that grows, because we want to fix those roads. We want to get the town moving forward. So this is the only budget that grows, not just the contractual obligations, but we literally make the investment in everything from trucks, upgrading them, to a new laptop, to new software. And we are confident, even with Neil's departure, that the team that we have, because we do have a very long-serving team in this position, we are confident that they will step up to the plate and do a good job. So again, it's the largest spending increase in the budget. It's almost $230,000. Again, pay and benefit is a driver, but there's $30,000 in there. We honored every request for every vehicle repair. And again, back on the road theme, the discretionary increases include $70,000 for everything from gravel to bituminous concrete to get the roads fixed. $64,000 of engineering. I'll be honest, a big chunk of that is the Highland Lake Dam, but we are focused on getting the infrastructure done properly. We also do keep the A2 surveys that are necessary both for tree removal over time, as well as to make sure that we have space up in the South Road Cemetery should we need it in terms of further needs in town. And then lastly, we do have a large increase in vehicle oil, gas, and grease. And not surprisingly, perhaps to anybody in the audience, Neil was the one department that calculated to the penny in terms of what that number would be. But I think it's really important for people to understand that we mean what we say. We're putting the investment dollars where we think they're most needed. On the police, we've talked to Chief Scannell. He has 3 open slots at this point. His staffing will remain at 18 officers plus Chief Scannell, which is 19. He has assured us, and we've talked at length about the fact that if he can fill the empty open positions and operate according to his existing contract, our overtime costs will be reduced. I will tell you that we have an overtime cost number in our budget now of $225. The initial pass had first cut it to $175. We restored a chunk of that money. We also restored some of his holiday pay. We want to make sure that he's got the tools to operate, but we also want to encourage him, which is why we are putting up the money to redo the downstairs, the painting, the carpet, the ceiling tiles, because we want them to feel good when they come into work every day. It's important for it to be a place that people come to, and it's hard to say enjoy working as a police officer, but we want it to be a place that's both good and safe. Again, large pay and benefit increases over $100,000. This is another really important thing. We are honoring every single request to the penny that was made for equipment and training. So everything from guns and tasers to the firing range and uniforms, we are honoring every single request. And then to the extent any adjustments were made, they've been made in consultation with the chief, looking at the current usage year to date, and then adjusting accordingly. And what you see there, by careful discussion with the chief, we've been able to keep their budget relatively flat It's like within $500. But we are making, make no mistake, significant investments in terms of another cruiser, which he specifically came and requested from us, and also the $30,000 of improvements. There's been nothing done to the downstairs in 15 years. Winstead Fire. Winstead Fire this year has actually, they're the only department, I think, maybe one of only departments that actually had a reduction. They had a change in staff, and because of that, the compensation profile changed. Additionally, the major chunk is they came to us and said because of a change in tax law, they have currently asked the town to suspend their contribution of roughly $37,000. I don't think, Dale, that we have any visibility on whether that could change in the future or not, but for this year, it is nice to have a $30,000 reduction, and I thank the fire department for being thoughtful in their budget. Other adjustments, again, have been made based on the chief's recommendations and on actual usage. And again, while they would like to have, and they have requested improvements to the actual firehouses, we focused on, in this year, in a tight year, where we've already asked everybody to pony up an extra 10% to catch up on the bills, we focused on buying them the rest of their turnout gear, which is actually in the current budget, as well as buying them the new Hearst tool so that they will have 2 working tools for any accidents that happen around town. This is just meant to give a summary. Again, this presentation will be available in Sheila's office. We will have copies. This is meant to give people a big picture snapshot of where we stand. What you'll see is that, again, the lion's share of departments have fairly substantial contractual increases in terms of costs, and there are discretionary adjustments which are both pluses and minuses depending on actual usage and in consultation with each of the department heads. Again, we welcome, I guess, any questions or feedback on these thoughts. The other thing I want to mention is that by the end of the day on Thursday, there will be the more detailed budget that is traditionally available, will be available in Sheila's office with the fully loaded numbers. The purpose of this presentation is to give people a flavor of where we are in terms of the budgeting process.
Marcia?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
On Neil's projection for fuel,
Yes,
his original number was 219,000.
correct.
So how did he adjust that? so much?
He had an incorrect price on a gallon basis. That's Neil's readjustment to his own number.
Actually,
Go ahead, sorry.
he adjusted the quantities, not
Okay.
the price, so that,
I thought he said the
Usage,
quantity
basically.
was what he used with the new gallon commitment.
no, he recalculated, he had used some historic figures that were provided by the purchasing department, and he went back and looked at the actual historic usage over the last couple of years, and he indicated that it dropped to approximately 177, which I think you talked about
Right.
rounding to 180 is the number that will be in there. But those were Neil calculations.
Yeah, those are Neil's, we relied on him. He actually came back to us with those numbers.
All right. A question on the police department. There's so much going on in the world today. This active shooter training, did Chief Scannell have that included in his stuff?
Yes.
And we had originally, and in order to actually perform that training, you have to have overtime. So when we met on the 31st, we reduced overtime by 75,000, but we restored it, because that was an error in our judgment.
Right. Candace and I met with the chief and talked about realistically giving his staffing now, given what the profile of new hires looks like in terms of timing, what did he need more back? And we restored it to 225. Thank you. Is that,
Specific questions on line items, because this is the first time I've seen it, but just a comment about,
well, can I finish and then we'll?
oh, yeah. I thought
One
you
more
were-
slide.
One more slide, thanks. So what's our bottom line? Our bottom line right now is a proposed spend of $32,750,000 plus or minus. We have a couple of line items, small pieces still moving, but we will, with Dale's help, fill those in within the next 24 hours. I want to point out that that is a reduction from the 34.7 million of the previous year, but I also want to point out that the previous year had the Main Street project, which was roughly $800,000. So that's part of the decline. But again, we've worked really hard with a sharp pencil. What this means is with town and grant revenues of around 11,270,000, that the property taxes proposed for this budget are 20,865,000. Sorry, 20,865,000 is the current year. Of course, that excludes the actual supplemental tax, which is another $2 million that we all paid to catch up on the bills that were not in this current year's budget, but obviously had to be paid. And so what that means in terms of a property tax increase to be able to put $700,000 into roads, meet those real capital needs, and continue to operate the town with a $325,000 increase in pay and benefits, is that this budget will need another $615,000, or a tax increase of under 2.9%. And we can say with $670,000 going to road repairs and road improvements, that all of the extra money we are asking the taxpayers for over their current real bills this year is going to go to fix the roads. And that's something that was very important to us. It was a guiding principle, because we hear you in terms of the number of people that have stood up here in the last year and talked about either losing their tires or having their suspension broken or having their alignment thrown out on their vehicles. Glenn was right. 600,000 is 770 is, I think, a really good starting point, but it's a starting point. And we're going to be very thoughtful and mindful and work with the Public Works folks and Dale to make the most of that money. And with that, I'll open up to George questions, and thank you. And actually, I'd ask, does our team have anything else to add? Okay.
Well, just first of all, a comment. I think that it looks like you've done a lot of work on this. It's a good presentation. The budget that Dale put forward was the first post-Henry budget, really. And he did it come up with the operational side and the capital side. And I was at Sewer and Water this past week, and Dale has worked hard on that also and did the same exact thing, so that there's the expense parts of all these budget items will be associated with the appropriate areas.
They feed in properly together now.
So that there's an understandable evaluation of the things that could be done better and those things that are being done very well. But I want to, the work, and you complimented Dale and Robin and so forth, and I want to again follow up with that, because the foundation for this new budget, as you had mentioned early on, it's not really comparable to previous budgets, because we used to hear Henry talk about, I don't know whether it was under his breath, but it was, I've got a few areas as cushions. And as we have seen, as this thing has been, the layers have been taken and peeled back, it was a mess. And it was, I don't know how anybody could understand what was going on. And Robin did one tremendous job in opening this thing up to us and getting it reestablished to the appropriate procedures. And Neil, back to Neil on the sewer and water, has done, he's got, I think, 9 budgets. I don't think Neil's here, but he's got 9 budgets, I think, in sewer and water.
Yeah.
With the whole
That's what he
process,
said.
which is complete reevaluation.
Well, it's very Neil. He's divided it into very fine detail so that he literally can price to the pencil what he's spending everything done, and that's what really you look for in every department.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We've got good people doing this in the staff here. And again, before we can move forward into any of these important areas with schools and to really, since there's been so much neglect in the road system and the bridges and so forth, they're beyond, in many situations, just maintenance. And we do have to get our foundation back in order. We do have to, and I know Robin had talked about the fund balance going up substantially on paper, so the cash value of that is the most important, the most critical thing we've got to look at. And once we get that in place, then we'll be able to come up with a bond package that will actually put us back on the charts in what we really need. Thank you.
I agree. Candace?
I'd also like to compliment Robin in completing even though we're still behind on the audits, the last audit, which thankfully the auditors gave us a tremendous amount of opportunity for improvement in the financial department, areas for correction, better policies going forward, and we were lucky enough to have that 10% increase in our, the policy we passed for the general fund. So we're definitely heading in absolutely the perfect direction. We have a great foundation, and I'm looking forward to hear the results from the next annual report, so we can even, get more on target going in the future.
Okay. And I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Again, I want to remind everybody that the summary presentation will be available along with the detailed budget in Sheila's office, the town clerk's office, and the town meeting is May 5th at 7 p.m. at the Gilbert School. I'm looking at Dale, he's nodding. And I would say that this is something we've spent a lot of time on. I think a lot of people have spent a lot of time on. I want to thank everybody for all their input. But what we're really, I think, all working for together is to find a way to turn the corner with respect to all that's happened in Winchester in the last little while. And I really do think that we're moving in that direction, and everybody really is working well together. And so I want to thank everybody for all their efforts, and also encourage all the townspeople, to the extent you have comments or thoughts, please feel free to mention them to us, talk to us about it, ask us questions. I really want people to go through the whole detail, but I also recognize that for most folks in their busy lives, again, we took a different approach this time around on this budget in terms of the way we've approached it. We really wanted to come up with something that was explainable, comprehensible, and was something that hopefully people can think about and really feel like they have their arms around. Again, we are keeping the staffing the same in town. We're hoping and looking forward to all of the existing employees doing their usual great job. We do have some challenges in front of us, but we do hope that you'll join us in agreeing that if we invest in the roads and continue to work together, that the town really will turn the corner. Before we move to the first item on the agenda for this evening's meeting, I want to share with the public an important email that we have received from Jay Costello. It was sent to Neil Amwake, our Public Works Director, and the subject is the Holabird Avenue Bridge. As we mentioned last night, we're moving forward with repairing it in the next few weeks with a goal of having it done before Neil's departure on May 9th. Neil, if you wish to follow up with a more formal letter after yesterday's visit, we provide the following summary. Conditions and repairs. The condition of the deck, as observed yesterday, does not really change our opinion as expressed in our email to you of January 23rd, 2014, to you and the town manager. The top side of the deck was in poor condition in January and still is in poor condition. There are just more potholes, and the town can no longer realistically wait until the bridge is replaced before needing a fix. The fix is now more urgent. We also went under the bridge and did not see any holes breaking through or signs that any holes are potentially about to break through. The condition we observed was similar to what the Connecticut Department of Transportation observed in May of 2012. So the deterioration you are seeing is in the top surface of the deck and typically less than 1/3 of the way through the deck. While it looks bad, our opinion is that the deterioration is more a rideability issue than a structural concern. I wanted to share this with the public because I know there have been some questions raised about the suitability of moving forward with repairs. Again, this is an email from our town engineers to the Director of Public Works stating clearly that it is appropriate at this time of year to repair the top deck, but it is not a structural concern. We are, however, going to undertake the most conservative steps or actions as recommended by our Public Works Director. We will be milling off or removing the top layer. It will be re-inspected, and then it will be repaired and opened. I just wanted to share that with everybody to make sure everybody understood that we are pursuing the conservative and appropriate course of action while also trying to move as expeditiously to get an important artery in town reopened. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to move into executive session, which I will invite the town labor attorney and the town manager to join us. May I have such a motion?
I make the motion.
Thank you, Candace. May I have a second? Glenn and George, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you in a little bit. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. The final piece of business this evening is to send the proposed selectmen's budget to a town budget meeting. We just wanted to share a few highlights to remind everybody our focus on this budget in terms of what we're hoping to what we're accomplishing. The proposed budget for 2014-15 spends $32,515,357, of which $19,958,149 is the Board of Education allocation, which is as requested by the Board of Education. It targets $689,715 for capital spending and a total of $770,000 for road repairs and maintenance, including $600,000 in capital and another $160,000 in operating expenditures, again, for road engineering and maintenance. It meets the safety requirements and equipment requests of both the police and the fire. It contributes a matching $300,000 to the town pension fund, comparable to the amount recently recovered through the Attorney General's office from Mr. Centralla's own pension contributions. This increase in property tax, and puts us all, including the town pension, on a more solid financial footing. The increase in property taxes collected is limited to $625,000 and $625,073, or less than about a 2.99% increase. With that, I would like to ask for a motion to send the budget to the town budget meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to send the selectmen proposed budget for the 2014-2015 fiscal year of $32,515,357 to the annual town budget meeting to be held on Monday, May 5th, 2014 at 7 p.m. at the Gilbert School Auditorium. Copies of such budget showing revenues by major sources and proposed expenditures by function or department in the columnar format prescribed for budget estimation in Section 1106 of the Charter of the Town of Winchester shall be available in the office of the town clerk at least 7 days prior to said town budget meeting and shall also show the amount to be raised by taxation.
May I ask for a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, George. All those in favor? Unanimous. Again, our focus on this budget is to answer the public safety needs of the town, repair the roads and bridges that need to be fixed, and move us to a more solid financial footing, all while being very cognizant of the fact that the town has been through an extraordinarily difficult financial time. There had to be an extra 10% tax raised in the last year to pay for old bills, and we want to be balancing the need to repair our infrastructure with the need to do it in a responsible manner and in a manner that works for everyone. So with that, I thank everybody for their attention in the last several evenings, really over the course of the last week, and look forward to hearing from everyone and seeing your attendance at the town meeting.